Hello and welcome again to Charles Kelly Money Tips. Hope you're having a good day. Reporting here from a sort of wet, windy, damp day in London, and in some parts of the country we've still got these storms and floods here. We've had terrible floods in the UK again, and I think the insurance companies and Lloyd's of London will be paying out massive claims in the next year, so watch out for that. There is a bit of good news today on the economic front, and that is that wages and incomes and salaries have risen above pre-economic crisis levels. This is from 2008, where the average wage now has reached the highest levels since before the financial crisis. Now, that doesn't mean that you haven't had a pay rise since then, but when adjusted for inflation and what we might call real income, that's what the levels have not risen since 2008. And that affects what you can buy with the money. What's the buying power? Obviously, they say things like, well, £1 million is not what it used to be, and that's because of inflation. £1 million, in even 50 years ago would buy you a lot of property, a lot of stuff, but maybe a millionaire now just buys you a house in the suburbs of some cities. So when you take into account inflation, incomes have not risen. And if you look now at the earnings, they've now reached £512 per week, which is still not a great deal of money, and they've gone up by 3.2% for the first in the first 3 month period. This is according to the statistics from the ONS. So it's a bit of good news there that incomes are on the rise for the first time. And if you look at the also figures, employment figures are up. That means the amount of people who are in work now rose by £180,000 to another record high of 32.93 million. So you might as well call it 33 million. But funny enough, unemployment stayed at 1.29 million. Maybe there's still a hard rock of people unemployed, and the new people are coming into the market from studies and that sort of thing have increased that, or maybe through immigration. So employment is at a high level, highest ever in this country. So as I was saying the other day, you've got around about 33 million people working, but there are actually around 20 million people who are actually dependent on the state or are getting state benefits of some sort. Of those, 7 million people are actually on unemployment benefit or some sort of long-term universal credit, that type of thing, which that would include people that's not straightforward unemployed people. That would include people who are on long-term sickness and in some form of housing benefit. Maybe people are claiming universal credit, but they're working part-time. And then there are around 13 million people on retirement benefits. So you've got a situation where you've got 30 odd million people working to support 20 million people who are not working and need state support of some sort. So that's a hell of a ratio when you think about it. When they started with state pensions and the idea of a state pension where you get an old age pension to live on, regardless of whether you had a company scheme, you'd expect there would be 4 people working for one person retired. Now, if you just take the retirement figures, it's nowhere near that. It's more like 3 to 1 for people who are in retirement. So it's not even 3, is it? It's almost going below 3 to 1. So 3 to 1. And if people keep living longer and longer, then we're going to have a situation where there might only be 2 people working for one person in retirement. And that doesn't include the people who are taking housing benefit and all the rest of it and just not working. So that ratio, something's got to be done. And this is what we're seeing in countries like France, where people can retire as early as 57. They're trying to push back these retirement dates, and people are going mad. They're smashing up the country. They're on national strikes. Here, people are writing to the papers or complaining on talk radio. But we have pushed back the retirement age to 67. So people who thought they would be retiring a few years ago at 65, and women have had to jump from like 60 to nearer to 65 now. So that as I think because the money is not there, there is no pension fund sitting there waiting for me when I retire. I mean, no state pension fund. They haven't allocated that money and say, well, you paid all these taxes and you paid your national insurance, so here's your pot of money. No, the money that I'll get will be paid for by taxpayers who are working now. And the problem with that is that, if there are less and less workers in ratio to retired people, and we are living much longer, that is going to be what they call a pensions time bomb. Because when they started this welfare state after the war, people were not expected to live to 80, and you'd be lucky if you made 70. You were considered an old man at 60, 65, and a lot of people only lived for maybe a couple of years in receipt of their pension, in pension benefits receipts. So now people are living to 80 and 90 and riding bikes around the park and going on saga holidays, and it looks like you see some people fit as a fiddle at 70 and 80, and I'm thinking, this guy's in his 70s, he looks so fit and strong, he could live forever. And his mum is still alive, she's in her 90s. So if you've got that situation, then there is going to be a problem being able to support people. And then we've got mechanisation coming in with less and less jobs available in the future, as there's going to be driverless cars, more AI, more artificial intelligence, and so on. So it is something to think about, and what you are going to do to sort your retirement out. Because if you're young now, you just cannot say, well, I'll get retirement benefit from the state, or I'll put £50 a month into my pension. That's not going to work. You need to really plan this and see your financial advisor and think, how are you going to do this? One of the ways people do it is to buy property, but that has changed, and the dynamic of that has changed with the tax changes that the former Chancellor George Six Jobs Osborne brought in a few years ago to take away the tax relief and the 10% wear and tear allowance on let-ins. So that's made a big difference to people's tax. And some people on higher rates of tax may only be breaking even where before they were getting an income from their property. But you can listen to that. That was a previous episode you might want to listen to. So let's look at the figures again. This figure shows the Office for National Statistics, the ONS, showed that the number of women employment increased again by 150,000 in the first 3 months to December. In the 3 months to December, to a record high of now 15 million women working or in work. And if you look at there's a chart here which you can find on the ONS website or the BBC, which shows that the rise in salaries from 2001 to just before 2008, 2007-8, average salaries rose from £430 to £510. So that was the time when things were booming. Then you had the financial crisis, and when adjusted for inflation, the average salary dropped to as low as £480. So they actually dropped, and people were worse off up until about 2013, 14, 15, and then they started to creep back up again. So it's showing signs of economic recovery, which is great, and it means that the money in your pocket now should buy you a little bit more, although it's only a few pounds more than it did a few years ago. But what I would say is we've also, instead of saying, well, okay, my salary is not going up, why do you not say to yourself, well, what are you doing about yourself? What are you doing to improve your prospects of earning more money? Are you just sort of waiting for the employer to pay you more money for doing the same job, or are you trying to improve yourself so that you become more productive? Because if a company and a business doesn't become more productive, then it will slowly fall behind the competition. It will eventually die. You've seen this with older businesses that sort of mature and then fade out, like people do. And this can happen to companies. So if you're not doing something to improve, then you are falling behind the people you're working with, and you'll eventually be replaced by somebody maybe younger or somebody more productive. So what are you doing? And this comes back to the old Jim Rohn thing of, what are you doing to improve yourself? How many books have you read this year? How many courses have you taken? How many seminars have you attended to improve yourself so that you can become more productive to your employer? Or do you just say to your employer, well, I'm doing the same job, I'm doing the same level of work, but I want more money. And the employer said, why? Well, because my costs have gone up. Well, yeah, but so has his costs gone up or her costs gone up. So how is the employer going to pay that extra money out of, you know, without increasing productivity? So what are you doing to increase your productivity? If you think of yourself as a business, a limited company, Charles Kelly Limited, what am I doing this year to improve myself? What am I doing to say, well, can I earn more money this year by being better at what I do, or working part-time, or finding a better job, or going back to do some studying so that I can earn a bit more money to go out and earn more money? I mean, I'll give you an example of my son who did this. He did a degree in music production, and he was able to get a job in a studio many years ago in London, a famous old studio. But he quickly realised that things had changed so much since the old days that there wasn't very much money in this business anymore. And you know, with technology, a lot of the things that were done by people have been replaced, and people can make music from a small studio in their bedroom, for instance. So anyway, and it was also long hours, unsociable hours. So he decided, well, I need to go back and change careers. So he went back to university and did a master's degree, which I funded for him because I thought this is a good investment in himself, and he put some money into that as well. And he went back and did a master's degree at the University College London in IT, information technology, and it was a kind of degree which teaches you about IT, but also about the technology world and the media world and so on. So it wasn't just an IT technical course, and it was a really good course. Came out, and he then got a better job in a bank. Now, that job, he said, well, I don't really enjoy this, but it's earning me more money. It was okay for the first year or so, but he was in a bank in the city. Then he met someone and went to America and got married, and was able to find a job with one of his old colleagues from university, and in a startup tech company that had I say a startup. It wasn't like, you know, here's 50 quid. It was just a $20 million startup, which has now grown rapidly, and it's to do with advertising in the gaming industry, and business is booming. They've been taken over by another company, and he's doing really well. But he would not have got that had he just sort of sat still and said, well, my income's not going to go up in the next 5 years because this industry is dying. What am I going to do? He went back to study, and now you don't have to go back and do a master's degree. You could do a short course if you wanted to learn about how to make money in your spare time, trading on Amazon, doing a bit of property, buying property with no money down, or doing a bit of rent to rent. You could learn that on a weekend course. You don't have to go back to university for a year. But there's lots of things you can do, even just in your own spare time, reading, studying, going to the library. Remember those library things? Just learning more about your industry so that you become more productive. So that's what I would say to you is, instead of just looking at, you know, the average incomes, because are you average, or do you want to make yourself above average? Do you want to be like everybody else, or do you want to move forward and be above average? Instead of just looking at that, look at what you can do to improve yourself. Because as Jim Rohn said, if you will improve, everything will improve for you. What's going on inside you is more important than the external factors. Okay, so that's it really. Just mention a few things about the coronavirus. Now, I've mentioned this before, and I think it will affect the economy around the world. It's already starting now. I predicted this in January. And even now, Apple are issuing a sort of a profits warning, saying that because of the coronavirus, production is down in China. You know, it's affecting Apple now, one of the largest companies in the world. It may be the largest company in the world. So, and it's not just affecting airlines and the travel business. It's affecting things across the board. There's going to be an economic slowdown. So I hope they can sort this virus out so that there is not an economic slowdown. But it is definitely having an effect, and you've got to look at that. And you know, there's not much we can do about it, of course. But I think that will have an effect this year, and it will affect economic figures in the coming year. So thanks for listening. And as I said, just remember this saying from Jim Rohn: if you will improve, everything will improve for you. Thanks for listening, and have a good day.